everybody. This is Rob Hahn of 70S Capital, and welcome to a total experiment. As you can see, it's COVID times, so we're all on Zoom. We have no name, so this is the as yet unnamed startup show, I guess we will call it. As you can see, I have a number of people with me, and I figure it's just a good to go around and introduce. I figure everyone, y'all know who I am, but I also do 70S Associates. I'm the managing partner there. And probably you know me because I write the notorious ROB blog. But this is a totally new experiment that we wanted to try. And in order to do that, I've brought on like real experts, because I might understand the real estate industry, but when we're talking to startups, I felt like it's really useful to have some people with a much deeper, much better understanding of the space. So let me start with Lynette. Hi, Lynette. Great to see
Hey,
you.
Rob. You too.
So how about a
Always
quick
fun to hang
intro?
out. Cool. Sure. So I'm Lynette Kioski, currently the managing partner for Reach Canada. So for those of you that may not know, Reach is the prop tech scale growth program of Second Century Ventures. Second Century Ventures is NAR's venture capital firm. So I have the privilege of getting to work with cool startups in the venture capital space, and we have been really growing that community and that ecosystem up here in Canada for the last year. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me. And I don't know how much of an expert, but I'm here just to have a really fun time.
Oh, no, you're seriously amazing. All right, Albert.
Okay, hi. I guess I'm supposed to be like humble, like super humble. I can't be like I know everything about everything, but I don't. I'm Albert. I'm a former startup founder myself, and in fact, I'm not. I didn't do like a serial thing. I did one, like, and just buried my bones in the ground and did that for like 8 years, um, and then um, and then I joined Google to head up Google for startups in Korea. So I did that for a few years. Um, so I'll stop there. But I do want to. Oh no, I won't stop. I do want to say that
Do you
for
want me
me,
to
like
pump you up?
entrepreneur. Say again?
I can pump you up.
No, 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 no. Yeah. So I do want to say that for me, I think entrepreneurs are my heroes. To be honest with you, just being in the trenches and understanding what that's like, what that process is like. It's an amazing human kind of story, and so I really want to I hope we have an opportunity to talk about some of that today.
Yeah. So with that said, are the first startup company we wanted to speak to in partnership with Drew at Geek Estate Mastermind is Brian Copley of CityBldr. Welcome, Brian.
Woo!
Yeah. And like I said, since this is just the first thing, like we intentionally said, let's try not to find out anything about Brian so he could tell us the story and tell us about his company with all that. So Brian, tell us a little about yourself first, and then tell us a little bit about CityBldr.
Well, thanks, first of all, to Drew for connecting us. Drew's a great guy. If you don't know him, he runs GEM, or Geek Estate Mastermind.
That's right.
And it is a very exclusive digital community of prop tech folks. So check that out if you're into prop tech. So I'm Brian. Thank you for having me. I think I was first a failed musician. That's probably the most important thing you need to know about me. Is the day I was graduating from high school, I thought that I was going to write symphonies the rest of my life. And I was in my cap and gown. My dad was giving me a hug as I was walking out the door to graduate. And he said, "Oh, by the way, son, there's no money in music. I'll see you at the graduation." And it's just like all of my hopes and dreams gone right there. Right. So I started at 18, graduating from high school with like almost zero plan, because I thought I was going to, work with symphonies the rest of my life. Now I'm a volunteer for the Seattle Symphony, and that's been great. But I kind of stumbled into entrepreneurship. So now
I have to ask, what instrument?
What's that?
What instrument?
Great question.
French horn.
Wow.
Ooh, tough one.
Yeah.
Nice.
French horn.
All right.
You can march with a French horn. I was in the marching band. I did not want to pick up a traditional marching instrument. So I would put my hand, like you did right there, Albert, into the horn and then kind of support it. And walk around, playing the French horn. It's pretty crazy. Like I said, failed musician.
All right. So sorry about that. Yeah.
Second act, I'm CEO of CityBldr. I have a co-founder named Devin Cairns, who's in Vancouver, BC. We've been distributed since day one. We are in, I think, 3 countries now as far as employees and things. So we're not any stranger to working from anywhere, because we've been cool with that for a long time. Devin and I have done 3 companies together, and I met Devin, I think when he was 17. He's getting old now. I think he's 23. So yeah, I think he's got a few good years left in him, but as savants go.
Okay. So tell us about CityBldr.
So CityBldr uses AI to determine the best use of land. As a kid, I used to like to play Sim City, and now I get to do it for a job. So we look at the 122 million US parcels, and then we figure out what's allowed to be built on each of those and create a ranking or indexing of all the things you're allowed to build on that land. And then we come up with what's called a highest and best use. So in our software, when you're looking down at the United States or even a block in any window, we're automatically massing or building in 3D all the things that could be there. And there's 10 quintillion possible things that could go on land in the US by right, according to all the rules today. And those rules are called zoning. 3,615 jurisdictions in the US. Within each of those, there's an average of 255 zones, or you can think of those as sets of rules. And we've created the first Rosetta Stone of zoning. So a lot of fragmented data. Our job is to standardize, normalize, aggregate, and synthesize that data so that you can make good decisions, whether you're a homeowner or one of the largest companies in the world.
That sounds amazing. So I'm really, really curious, Brian. Other than the fact that you maybe were an avid gamer and loved SimCity and wanted to make it like, your dad took the first dream of music away, couldn't take your second dream of maybe building video games away. I don't know. I'm connecting dots that probably aren't there. But what was the impetus behind CityBldr? Why CityBldr?
Yeah, great question. I think my story is a classic one of grabbing opportunities that present themselves. I don't have a college degree. My co-founder also dropped out of college when he was 19, much to his father's chagrin, who is a university professor. Thought it was a terrible idea at the time, and I wasn't invited to dinner for a while. But his dad's happy now. But started at 14. My aunt was a software engineer in Seattle, and she invited me to the office. I thought what they were doing was really cool, and I got a job taking out the trash and cleaning the office. And about 3-4 months in, I started breaking things, basically. I started getting into her machine, using the software and finding problems with it, or creating problems with it. And, now what we call bugs. I didn't know what that was called. I just thought, this is really cool software. Let's see what it can do and what it can. And that landed me a meeting that I did not want with the CEO of the company, who is a PhD in physics from Yale. And I thought I was in a lot of trouble. I thought I was going to lose my job. And he said, show me what you did. And I did. And he goes, you got a knack for this. Do you want a job not cleaning the office, but testing software?
Oh, wow.
And for 4 years,
very
from
cool.
14 to 18, or maybe 5 years almost, I had a real job. And true story, my mom is also an entrepreneur. She's run a landscaping company for 25 years. And she started us working when we were about 9 or 10, and she'd pay us our age in dollars per hour. So I actually thought that legally everyone had to be paid their age in dollars per hour. So when I went to negotiate for my first job, he sat down with me and he goes, okay, so what I think is fair is $12 an hour. I was 14, and I looked at him and I was like, you're not getting away with that. I was like, look at my ID, I'm 14. And he was like, what does that have to do with anything? $12 an hour is not bad, right? And I was like, no, you're paying me 14 an hour, and then I explained it to him and he laughed. And he did, he paid me 14. And when I left at 19, I got $19 an hour.
Love it.
So anyway, it started by learning about software and having a massive fascination for automation. And then around 19, my boss was like, you know what? You're too smart not to go to college. If you want to continue working here, you got to promise me that you're going to at least, go to school. So I enrolled, got good grades, but the bottom line was I never went to class because I never saw a future in getting a degree in anything. I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I was getting good grades, so I was never caught. And then some things happened, and I decided that I wanted to leave Seattle and just live in a different place that maybe wasn't cold. So one day I got in my 1988 Toyota Corolla with like 300,000 miles on it, took all the money I had, the stuff I had, threw it in there, shoved my money in my pockets, and my brother saw me leaving. He's like, "Where are you going?" And I was like, "Camping." And he said, "No, you're like getting out of here, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna move to somewhere warm." And he was like, "Well, let me call my boss and let him know I'm moving too." So my brother jumps in the car with me. We head down the 101 to California. It was still too cold then. It was January. So we headed east. We got to Phoenix. It was somewhat warm, and I lived in Phoenix for a year. Wow. And just by chance, my best friend's dad had left Seattle, moved to Phoenix, and was a rich dad, poor dad type real estate investor. Owns 100 plus properties. And I got a job down there. I worked for Mom Pa Bell doing enterprise sales from 5 a.m. till 2 p.m. And I'd be done with work and would just go hang out at the pool or do whatever 20-year-olds do in good weather. And he said, "Why don't you come down to my real estate office and I'll show you some things that I've learned." And this is one of those opportunities that I literally would not be sitting here right now if I hadn't gone to that real estate office. So I got there and he goes, "Let me teach you some real estate lessons." He goes, "Let's step outside." So we go on this residential street. He said, "Show me the houses for sale." And I pointed to 3 yard signs. He goes, "Wrong. Every house on this street is for sale." Then we went back into his office and he had piles of paper. And he said, "I'm going to show you some things about all this data." And we went through all these data fields and he had me highlight variances between the last sale price and the assessed value. And then we looked at like 5 other data fields. And he said, "When they meet all these criteria, highlight them." So I did this Monday through Friday for 9 months. Wow. Highlighting, looking at all this data. And then on Saturday, we'd get in his car, and out of maybe 1,000 of these properties we looked at, we'd go try to get 10 to 15 of them. And that was my favorite part of the week. I hated the highlighting. I loved the business stuff. We'd go out there and, we'd cut deals. And in that year that I apprenticed, let's call it, for him, he didn't pay me anything. I think he bought me lunch 3 times. I made no money on it. And he said, "This is the best education you'll ever have." And he was right. He taught me how to use real estate data to find value that people didn't see and how to do off-market deals, to generate deals that weren't even there. And so my takeaway after that year was 2 things. The first one was I could do what he did better than he did it and, make a lot of money. But what I'm actually fascinated by is the idea that we're spending 90% of our time doing analysis and 10% doing deals, when we should be spending 10% of our time doing analysis and 90% doing deals. And I made a deal with myself in my early 20s that I was going to build something with what I learned about automation in high school to automate the analysis of all real estate and flip that from 1090 to 9010. And it's taken a decade and a half, but here we are.
That's awesome. I want to just ask one quick question. So I love that story about you guys having 1,000 properties or so forth. So were you just literally walking up to people's houses, knocking on their door? Like, can you explain what that process is like a little bit, trying to make a deal?
Yeah, it's somewhat unnerving because you are knocking on someone's door. They don't know you from Adam. And the first thing you say is, "I'm interested in buying your property."
Yeah.
Some people are like, take a hike. Other people are like, are you for real? And other people just immediately engage. And they're like, great, I was thinking about selling my property. And the bottom line is you have no idea. You just have no idea where people are at. It is for most people, it is a personal decision to sell a home they live in. If it's an investment property, there's a totally different way to approach it. But if it's a house that someone lives in, it really comes down to whether or not they're in the state of mind of selling. And not many things will change that. There are a few things. Economics sometimes do change that. But yeah, for the most part, these people had no idea who we were, and we were asking them if they wanted to sell us their property.
That's awesome. I love that. Like, that a lot of great startups to me, like we talk about hustle or whatever, but doing that, like, that nasty work, going like door to door, customer to customer, that kind of grinding. I just love that. I just want to ask one more question about that process. As you were doing that, did you draw any lessons from that process of going on knocking on doors and trying to buy houses? Has any of that kind of translated over to your current business right now?
Yeah, great question. So we call the process by which people hunt for off-market properties knock, talk, stalk, and walk. And it's not an enjoyable process. I mean, it's great for getting your 10,000 steps a day, but one of the things that we decided that we were going to do is change that into a digital experience. So with my previous company, Every Home, we put every home up for sale. Day one, we launched and it said, every home is for sale. It was that first lesson I learned. Yeah. And it allowed anybody interested in any property in the country to make an offer on that property on our platform. And we built it for consumers. What we were trying to disintermediate was this nasty process by which people walk through, San Francisco or Seattle, and they find a house they like, but it's not on the market. And so they write these cute letters and they show pictures of their dogs and their kids. And they're like, we love the school district, but there's no houses for sale here. And nothing really has changed in the last 7-8 years. And so we thought, why don't we just make it easy on them? Why don't we allow them at 11:45 at night when they're having a glass of wine after work and they're just stressed because they can't find a house in this neighborhood to go walk through the neighborhood digitally and approach someone about buying the property. We thought that was a really cool idea. And when we thought about businesses that scaled, we thought, these have to be tech companies. You can go on Zillow at 1 a.m. and you can find a property. You can go to realtor.com at 2 a.m. and look at a property like it's the middle of the day. That wasn't possible 25 years ago, but it's possible today. And so, yeah, we wanted to take that process that was knock, talk, stalk, and walk, all manual, and digitize it. That was step one. And then CityBldr actually was derived from our being wrong about who the right customer for that product was. So we built it for consumers. After launching it, 86, 87% of our power users were investor, builder, developer, real estate investment trust, private equity, hedge fund, contractor, broker, architect, engineer, all of these people on the commercial side. And we thought, wow, that's not what we planned. We thought we were connecting consumers for home purchases. And what we were actually building was something that allowed people that were underwriting underutilized property to go after those properties. And that was an aha moment for us. We realized that people were just like my old real estate boss. People were manually underwriting properties where there was a house there, but what they saw was townhomes or a small apartment building. And they were driving around, knock, talk, stalk, and walk. They were taking the back of an envelope, literally sometimes, and doing a pro forma analysis. And then they were approaching an owner, just the same way we'd done 15 years ago. And they wanted to use our product to go and digitize that process. So we built a product called CityBldr. This was not a company. We built a product and we brought it to some of the best power users. And we said, tell us how this thing should work. and we got 760 builders, I think, on the platform. We'd set up an early machine learning algorithm to trace what they were doing and how they were doing it and start to build best practices. And we found some patterns, right? Machines are really good at finding patterns. And we built out this really, really core basic, now I look at it, laughable pro forma that we layered on to every property in the United States. And it didn't work the way we wanted it to because of zoning, right? The rules in Seattle weren't the rules in Manhattan.
Right.
And so we had to build something else from scratch, which was the Rosetta Stone of zoning, is what we call it, right?
Wow.
And that was a really big lift. There's no way to automate the beginning part of that. There's just a lot of trial and error. And we tried somewhere around 25 to 30 things before we found something that worked in a machine learning model that allowed us to get to maybe an 80% fidelity for automation of that. And then having to fill in edge cases because there's not enough information to machine learn and, figure out what you have to figure out. And then we did it. And I remember I was in San Francisco. I was staying at one of our investors' houses. And my co-founder, who's nocturnal, had been working all night. And when I woke up, that's usually about the time he's going to bed. And he sent me a number. And it was like $217 billion. And I was like, Devin, what's this number? And he goes, that's the difference in what people think homes are worth and what they're actually worth in Seattle. That's
In Seattle.
The price difference in Seattle.
Wow.
And I said, can you do LA? He goes, yeah, just a second. Comes back. He's like, it's 287 billion. I was like, okay, do New York, right? And New York was like a mess, but it was a massive, massive number. And we've been working on New York ever since because the zoning there is insanely hard. It's different than every other market in the United States. But what we found is there's simple math, about $1 trillion, maybe $1.5 trillion difference in the perception of value of residential real estate in the US and its highest and best use value. So massive opportunity.
I love how you just completely laid out that whole story, Brian, and gave us a really good view of kind of the trajectory that got you kind of to where you are today. And what I love even more is all of those threads of the examples that you had right from the very get-go, the curiosity that you obviously had, just innately to follow these things that you were questioning or you were just curious about, a lot of that mentorship, I think that's a big piece from an entrepreneur's point of view is, are you willing to learn from those who've come before you or those who have something to teach you? I mean, the 9 months of highlighting, I can't imagine any 20-year-old who would have thought that was a good idea or that would stick with it for that long. So that's amazing. What I'd love to ask though is, okay, so you have CityBldr and you've gone through this evolution of every home and trying to solve a problem, getting it wrong, which is again the entrepreneur's journey, right? You think you're doing one thing and really that's not going to work. So you fail a couple of times and you continue to move forward. But my question is really, so you land on this thing, CityBldr, you realize that it's not the consumer, but it's everybody else kind of at, on the investment side of the coin that wants a piece of this or to participate. How do you evolve? Like, I'm curious. So how do you take it to market? You talked a couple of times about the we, and you've talked a couple of times about the switch. I'm curious about those things, right? So who was the we? How did you and your co-founder hook up? Where did you guys meet? How did you, what were a couple of those pivot points? And then how did you realize what you needed to keep going? So what was it? Was it data? Was it money? I'm just curious what the evolution of the company was once you got to that aha moment.
Yeah. Well, I'll answer the question about how Devin and I met. I needed a great engineer. I was working with one who was super talented, but I felt like, I needed like a Zuck, right? And yeah. It's a really big, hairy problem that I've been obsessed with solving for a long time. And at the end of the day, I needed someone quite a bit smarter than myself to make that work. And I, put out an APB and said, help me find this person. And Vincent Chan who was working with me for me at the time, said, all right, I'm going to introduce you to someone, but he's really young, like he's in high school. And I was introduced to Devin, and Devin started building computers when he was 7 in his basement. And he's all self-taught, pretty brilliant guy. I didn't know that at the time, and I just gave him a month-long project and said, here, Devin, can you get this done? So I gave him the project on Friday afternoon. Sunday morning, Devin was like, hey, do you want to see the project? And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll take a look at the progress, right? He finished it. I was like, Devin, no human could do this project in a weekend. And he's like, well, I didn't sleep very much this weekend. And now that I know Devin, I know he barely sleeps at all. So we're very compatible.
The nocturnal nature.
We both need 5 to 6.5 hours of sleep, and we're like, just, I don't know, coffee and energy, and it's just something. So that worked. I like to move quickly on certain things. Devin likes to move quickly on certain things. So there's a lot of compatibility there. And as we've gotten to know each other culturally, from a values standpoint, we really mesh. We feel that the world is changing constantly, and that the way we'd like to see it change is completely aligned. So we care a lot about creating access to opportunity for people. That you'll see in our homepage. If you go to CityBldr.com, we are democratizing information for homeowners to be able to discover that their property has a lot more value. And we were given a dozen to a dozen and a half opportunities not to run the business that way. We were offered $8 million by an investor to turn this into a private tool for them to go out and arbitrage these properties. And the reason that couldn't work for us is, single mom, entrepreneur. I saw her struggle. We moved a lot. Housing insecurity was a real thing for me and my siblings. And when we finally got into a single family home, it was the biggest deal in the world. It literally had a white picket fence and a yard. And, it was such a struggle to get there that I couldn't then take this thing that I kind of, if you know the story, lucked into and use it to help the haves take from the have-nots, right?
Would you have done it for 80?
What's that?
Would you have done it for 80, not 8?
No.
Like, honestly, when you think about it.
No, and there's a business reason there too. It's not just the culture thing, because you're in business, you have stakeholders, you have shareholders, you have VCs, right? You have to give them a business return. But I believe in the ESG movement. I believe that there is more value created by doing the most good for the most people than there is in doing a lot of good for one party.
So you're very mission driven. You're saying your company's very mission driven. It sounds like very, very like kind of values driven.
We're very values driven. And at the end of the day, that is one of the reasons that we will get our investors those multiples. It won't happen in 1 year or 2 years, but over a period of a decade, over a period of 2 decades, those investors will do very well, and we will leave the world a much, much better place. And so I'll tell you, for consumers, some of the things we've already done. So when we did this product and we pushed it out to the market, it got on the news twice. And we had tens of thousands of people go to the site. These were off-market owners. They signed up, they created a profile, and they were like, I might want to sell to a builder or developer. So we had to go get a brokerage license. We decided we were going to become a broker and help them sell to builders and developers using this data. Well, the first thing we found out is we're terrible real estate brokers. That's really not our business. We're very good at software, but we're not a broker. But we did get these listings, and we did it all the right way. And we took one owner, I think Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com, one of those said the property was worth $450. We told him the AI says you're going to get $752. And he was like, do it, right? So he got $761, and that was our first proof point. And we were like, wow, this thing works. And then we built this other engine that looks at all of the adjacent or contiguous properties and builds values for those and says, your house isn't valuable to a builder by itself, but if you sell it with your 5 neighbors, we can get you twice what you think it's worth. So we did that. And it was just sitting down in the living room of one of the guys' houses with pizza and beer and signing listing agreements and saying, here we go. And we threw it out there. And, I think Zillow said they were worth 1.9 for these 5 homes. We said 3.2. They got 3.5. Then we did 8. We did 8 homeowners together to make, a rectangle. The number was 3.3 for their properties. We said 7.5. They got 8.2. They got $1 million a piece for $400,000 homes. So, and 2 of those owners, and I'll never forget this, and it's not even worth thinking about how big this business could get without stories like this. 2 of those owners said, this is a game changer. We are going to retire 5 years, was one group, 7 years earlier than we thought because you guys built this.
So let me ask you, Brian, what is, so I totally get it. I totally get that you guys are closing that gap between market and value and basically value, right? Ultimate value. And, kind of squeezing that number from whatever it is, trillion to whatever it can potentially be. But let me ask you this, what's the ultimate your mission-driven kind of point of view, what do you and Devin hope to really achieve through CityBldr? What's your ultimate mission in the context of what you're building?
That's an awesome question. Thank you for asking it.
You're welcome.
Our mission is to create happy, functional, sustainable communities using data.
Cool.
We want to build better cities. And we trademarked the phrase, actually, I think it's right here on my sweatshirt, that we build smart cities. This is
smart cities. Yeah.
This is what we want to do, big picture. So, it starts with communities. It starts with maybe one property, neighborhoods, then you go to cities. And we want cities to be better places for people to have access to opportunity, to work, to live, to play, to have access to parks and green spaces and things like that. And what we found is there are no best practices for building a city or running a city. There's no data-driven model that says your city has a, really shitty score and this is how to fix it, right? And we want to do that. That's what we want to do. Big picture is build better cities across the world.
So I have so many questions. By the way, this is one of the best ideas I've heard in a really long time. I mean, seriously, it's amazing. It's mind-blowing. But you're in the world of politics is the only way I could put it. I mean, this, like you're doing zoning, you're compiling the Rosetta Stone. I love that. I'm like, holy crap. Why has this not existed before? So I'd start with, I'll start with some of the easy questions. Like, have the city, like the governments reached out to you? Because I'm just sitting here thinking, like, if I'm a city planner, right? Like, this is data I need to have. Like, have they reached out to you guys at all? Are they among the clients, I guess, or customers, not just the developers? Like, so that's just a yes, no type question, I guess, right? Have city governments reached out to you, say, hey, we could use this?
Yes, but the first lesson that I learned that I thought was very good from better entrepreneurs than me in the Bay Area mostly is get ramen profitable. Make sure that you can make enough money to feed yourself. So get to ramen profitability. And so that was something that really early on, the mentors that came alongside me drilled into my head was you need to make money. So sure, we could sell products to cities, but cities had very little money and now have negative money since the pandemic. So not the best first targets for us as a company, although there's myriad applications for cities. And,
it's obvious.
And our first product for cities launches in April, but that wasn't the right place for us to focus.
Then the second question is this. I mean, you're doing it through the financial system, which makes perfect sense in the world, right? I'm the biggest believer in markets and markets solve problems, et cetera. But when it comes to real estate, you run into the NIMBY issue. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I'm like, does your system take that into account somehow? Or just talk to me about that problem.
Yeah, we don't call it the NIMBY score, but we basically developed a programmatic way of looking at cities and understanding how likely they are to allow for the things that their rules say you can do. So San Francisco scores very low there, right? Even if you're looking at as of right or by law development, it can take 6 to 8 years after you apply to do something that's allowed to have it actually come to fruition. So there are cities that make development and change of land use very difficult, and there are cities that are very permissible. They look at the law as the law, and if you meet the criteria, you can do it. There's even one city in the US, and if you guys can name it, you get the gold star for the day, that doesn't have any zoning or laws at all.
It's Houston. It's Houston. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. That's what I was
Gold
thinking.
star for Rob.
That's right.
Yeah,
But that's
gold
because I
star
live
for
there.
Rob.
That's because I live there. I
was gonna
use
say
them
he
as an
cheated.
example.
He
No,
cheated.
but I use them as an
Yeah.
example all the time because I'm
Totally.
convinced that zoning is, and I've written posts about this. I actually think a lot of the systemic racism that we have as a country is related to housing, and it's related to zoning. I'm sorry, zoning's roots are racist. Like there's just no debating that, right? I mean, what it's turned into now, we can debate that, but there's just no question that its origins, back in the 30s was in fact to keep Black people out of white neighborhoods. There's just can't be debated, right?
Yep.
So having said that, wait, let me finish this last thing. What's your coverage? You said United States, but you're CityBldr. Do you guys have like suburban and rural county coverage as well, or is it just cities for now?
We're in 113 cities.
Okay.
We've started to think a little differently about which markets we should start to look at. We started doing that prior to the pandemic, and of course, the pandemic has been the great accelerant, right? It's accelerated any trends that were in the making by 5 to 10 years. One of those trends is work from anywhere. And there are markets that we really thought were interesting markets, and now they're must-have markets that didn't meet our criteria. They don't have 250,000 or more people, for example. They don't have a major university. They aren't a massive employment hub from a FANG company, right? Or even a large company sometimes. But they're great places to work, great places to live, great places to explore. And if you can work from anywhere, why not? Why not go to Sun Valley or Bend or Boise or one of these other places, Savannah, Georgia? So we're thinking a little differently now about those markets. And of course, with the number of markets we're in, we haven't completely exhausted, but mostly exhausted the gateway markets and the secondary markets. So we're thinking about tertiary markets as well. And we're also thinking about other countries. There are 4 countries that we haven't announced yet, but we're doing all of our diligence there. And probably in the next 18 months, we'll expand the product to another country.
That is awesome.
Love it.
So that was actually, sorry. So that was actually my question. I feel like, this is like us gushing over you guys.
This is I'm gushing, and
which is like,
know me, I don't gush. Like this is unbelievable.
I want to. I mean, and it speaks to kind of how polished you are. I feel like you're and you know what you're talking about. So we're obviously very impressed. So I don't want to gush. I want to ask some kind of something that's been kind of, as I listened to your story, it seems like there were quite a bit of shifts in a lot of discovery going on. I'd love to know kind of what your most difficult time was up to this point, right? What your biggest challenge was. I know it doesn't look pretty on the inside, and you don't have to like show us everything, but what was kind of like the big difficulty you ran into up until now, and how did you kind of resolve that?
Well, I can't believe I have to pick just one, because I think there might have been 6 or 7 times where, the little devil on your shoulder is like, it's over, it's game over, you're dead. Like, and you start a company default wrong and default dead. Like every startup is default wrong, default dead. And you just have to push through it. It's no different than what I imagine, running a marathon feels like. I haven't done it, and I have no ambitions to. 5 miles is my distance. But you've got to just keep going. One of those moments that I had to push through was when we realized we're getting all of these listings. We're going to provide a terrible experience for these owners if we remain the broker, because our DNA is software, and it's a totally different set of core competencies to be a great brokerage. There's maybe one example, I guess I would point to Redfin as one company that has done really good at software and really good at brokerage, right? But there's not many of those. And they've experienced their share of difficulties in trying to be great at both of those. Glenn would be the first one to tell you that. Great speaker, by the way, great guy. So yeah, we realized this probably doesn't scale as a brokerage unless we want to get amazing at being a broker. And so we had to figure out, a better business model.
Was there a lot of internal disagreement with that, like with your team, or was it?
Yeah,
I'm kind of curious about what that.
Investment at that point. So we had investors who wanted us to do X, and we had investors who wanted us to do Y, and we had advisors who said this is the way to go, and ones who said this is the way to go. And when you get conflicting advice, this is probably a good rule of thumb as a startup founder. Go to the data, and even more succinctly, go to your customer. Talk to your customer and ask them, how can we make this better for you? And when we talked to people, they were like, this data was incredible and very useful, and we want to act on it, but hey, you guys
suck at it,
right?
Yeah.
And so we almost gave up, but what we decided to do, and this is great timing for us to be talking to you guys about this, we decided to build relationships with the best brokerages in the United States. And so, in Seattle, that was Windermere. So, they're the second largest regional brokerage in the US. They do $27 billion of volume and have 6,700 agents. And they give back to the community. They're awesome. They've been here 40, 50 years, family owned. And so I built a relationship with the CEO of Windermere. It took 2.5 years. And, at the end of that rainbow, we decided to partner up. And now when people come to CityBldr and they discover this value, a Windermere broker calls them. Not a CityBldr broker, not a CityBldr employee. A Windermere broker calls them and says, I'm really good at helping people sell their properties. And we have all this data that suggests that the right person to sell this to is not someone who's going to come knocking on your door wanting to move their family in. It's someone who wants to take these 8 homes right here next to the light rail station and put 262 affordable multifamily units, apartments there for people that don't have a car, can't afford parking or car insurance. They work downtown. And if they move into this place and it's affordable, they can hop on the light rail and be at their job downtown in 15 minutes, right? So that's a really awesome improvement.
Wow.
Totally. Brian, I really want to pursue this a little bit, because one of the things that we find by virtue of who we are, right? An NAR affiliate growth program for technology companies. One of the first assumptions that a lot of companies have when they approach us is, well, just open your Rolodex and all I need is that one conversation. I want to partner with brokerages. I want to partner with the real estate community. And that's going to, I'm going to be a unicorn company in 10 years, right? And I'm out. But we all know that's not the case. So I would love for you just to talk a bit more about, because it sounds so easy. I just built a relationship with the CEO of Windermere. First of all, you had the presence of mind to understand that you kind of needed to do that, right? You needed to understand what you weren't good at, what you were good at, and how to partner with the people that could do the things that you couldn't better than you can. But specifically around these brokerage relationships, because you're in 115 cities, right? 3 countries. That's going to require more than one relationship. Talk to us a bit about that. And how do you build those relationships in a way that it creates the value that you've just discovered? And because there's a lot of trust that has to be embedded in that conversation so that those real estate agents and brokers are driving business back to you and vice versa. So I'd love to hear just your thoughts on how you've evolved that part of your business.
Yeah, I mean, relationship building is a slow process. And it's anathema to startups to do things slow. But unfortunately, relationship building is a slow process if it's done right. So I've told our board, I've told our team, we are going to build relationships, and it's going to take time. And we have two parts of our business. We have an enterprise half of our business that is a analytics-driven engine that powers acquisitions for some of the largest companies in the world. And when we meet with them, we say, we expect this process to take a long time. We aren't going to try to close you. You'll, at some point, we'll have a meeting of the minds and we'll think of each other as partners and we'll sign a long-term operating agreement. But we expect that process to take 4 to 18 months. So let's start, right? And people are like taken back. They're like, you're not going to ask for my business today? We're not. We're definitely not going to ask for your business today. Because it's a partnership. We think of the companies that we do business with not as customers, but partners. And if you want to have a good partnership, you better align on values. You better align on where you're headed, you know, not just where you are now, but you got to skate to where the puck's going, as the great one said. So where are you headed? Where are we headed? And are we going in the same direction? So I would just say, plan to do whatever you're doing. If it's a really, really big thing, plan to do it for a decade. There are startups that, you know, raise money, sell really fast, and then do it again. They do it 3 times in 10 years, 4 times in 10 years. That's fine. But for who we are, that doesn't work, because we want to really like change the trajectory of cities across the world. That's audacious, right? It's and it's really hard, and it takes building relationships, and it takes going places. You know, I plan to spend a lot of time in Japan, not just because I love sushi, but because the people of Japan like to sit down together and spend time together, right? And for us to have a relationship with the best companies in Japan, I will need to go to Japan. And so
I'm going to help you when you do that. I'm going to help you when you do that. So definitely let me know. I'm going to hook you up. So
awesome.
I know we only have like 15 minutes right now.
It just sucks. I'm like, this was an experiment. If I'd known, like, we need to reschedule.
It's gonna be so
I'm gonna have Brian back, because you could go 4 or 5 hours.
Our
on
show
this.
is gonna be all like CityBldr for like.
No,
10
it's just the
episodes.
CityBldr show, you know.
But
6 episodes.
Yeah, so I know we only have 15 minutes, and I have a ton of questions, some good and some bad. But there's one that I definitely wanted to ask you. Is there a question like that nobody's ever asked you, but you wish they had about your company?
Oh, such a good question, Albert.
Wonderful question.
It's like he's
Albert.
done this before. My goodness.
No, I'm, just right. As a founder, you don't have to answer it right away, but just if you guys have other closing.
There is a question.
Yeah.
There is a question, and that is, what is our secret to finding great people?
What's your secret to finding great people?
That is the most important thing about
absolutely
our company.
How big is your team? How big is your team, Brian? I'm just curious.
We're 13 people.
That's awesome. Oh, that's so awesome.
That is so good. I'm glad you didn't say like 43 or like 95. I get that a lot.
We're small and mighty.
Awesome.
At the end of every interview I've ever done with a candidate that I really liked, I asked the question, what motivates you? And the way people answer that question and their preparedness to answer that question tells me a lot. And we find people that are motivated similarly to how we're motivated. And the way they answer that question tells us a lot about their values. It's really great to ask that question in person, because body language is important. Just everything about how they respond to that question is critical. So that's how we find good people, is we find out what really makes them tick, and we drive in on it, and then we find out what they really, really want. And my job is to help them get that.
Is there one of your employees, one of your team members now, where the answer to that question really like stuck in your mind?
Yeah, there's a guy that we hired that we weren't even looking for. He was really interested in our business, and he just showed up at our office one day. And he's worked for
I
us for
love
4
that.
years now. And he was working for government, for the city government. And he saw how ineffective government was at using their data, and he thought, gosh, there's just so much, there's a treasure trove of data here, but we're not using it the right way. So he showed up and he said, I have a degree in GIS and oceanography. I care a lot about the planet. I've since started working with data. I'm an engineer, I code, but I'm really passionate about land use and about, using land the right way. And I see the potential for what you guys could do with this, and it's massive. And I just want to be involved in it.
Wow.
Whatever I can do, whatever you need me to do, I just want to be involved in it.
So he really
And,
bought into the mission. He saw like the value that you guys saw, right? And so yeah, that's a heady moment. That's
That's
congratulations on
amazing.
that. Yeah.
That
so
is
we
so
hired
amazing.
him. We just hired him, and he got in,
sweat.
and he has built amazing things. He's been an amazing team member. He fell in love with a professor who got a job in Sydney, Australia, and he thought he was going to have to leave the company. And we were like, no, just work in Sydney. So he's lived in Sydney, Australia now for 3 years, 4 years, and just loves the autonomy, loves the way we work. Yeah, but another guy, Phil, our head of data science, he turned down Google. He had, he had a job offer at Google, PhD from UW, worked at Microsoft, turned down Google, and he was like, I just love what you guys are doing, and I want to be a part of this. And we have this idea, and it's crazy that we can build best practices for cities that will improve the lives of millions of people.
I genuinely want you guys to just replace HUD, right? Like if you guys are successful with what you're doing, I don't see the need for a giant federal bureaucracy, housing, urban development, where government does like what you're doing is essentially the mission of that housing and urban development. You know what I mean? Like it's insane how huge this is. This is incredible.
I mean, we could go down this rabbit hole, Rob, but I have this. There are so many great entrepreneurs and so many great solutions out there that,
Yeah.
it's a real thing. Like, how can we replace all of the bureaucracy with just really, really smart people that are doing good things for the right reasons? And I think that's the other piece that I love about this whole conversation is, your mission, Brian, has all been about doing the right thing for the right reasons, right? And that to me is what's so cool about working with entrepreneurs and the amount and the fact that there's so much support for the entrepreneur and startup space right now from in 100 different ways, not just money, but support. If you'll indulge me, can I throw one more question out that I think really dovetails nicely into Albert's last question and how you answered it around asking that question and what motivates you? Because I think one of the things that is so amazing about people like you that have blazed trails and created this amazing mission and have this massive vision. You've talked a lot about the BHAGs that you guys have, right? Those big audacious goals. When you think about all of that, what keeps you up at night, Brian?
What keeps me up at night? Well, I don't sleep easy, and when I'm trying to hack a problem, I stay awake and try to work through mental models to deal with it. But then what keeps me up, what actually does wake me up in the middle of the night, is when my subconscious fixes the problem. So oftentimes the biggest breakthroughs I have are I'm not solving the problem. It gets solved somewhere else. And then I wake up and there's an aha moment, and I've got to run over, write down the solution, and then diagram it, not scare my leadership team with this crazy thing that I woke up in the middle of the night with. And then in a very succinct way, present it so that it's not, oh God, Brian just had another crazy idea, but this is how it connects to who we are, what we do, what our goals are, the things we have to execute on for 12 months. And if it is not falling within the next 12 months, I parking lot it, I put something on my calendar for when I'm going to bring it up to the team. And there are 5 of those things that I just have never told my leadership team about. I don't want to bug my co-founder with them, but we will execute on them. I've even created a pseudonym and in Twitter, and then taken all those things and tweeted them so that they're like held somewhere, those diagrams. So if you're really, into the idea, you can go try to find my pseudonym. But it's those massive, massive, massive things that it just doesn't seem like a startup should even be able to work on, that I love to try to hack. And those things wake me up in the middle of the night. And then as far as things I'm worried about, I'm worried that we will not be able to have the connection we have with employees now when we get larger. I'm worried that it'll become a machine, and that at some point, the relationship that I have with people that work in the company will change. And we won't feel the same way, and we won't be able to connect to people and give them what they need, both as a company, as an employer, but also just personally. So how to stay connected to every single person that ever gets hired at this company is something that keeps me up at night.
Very cool.
Awesome. Rob, I think you said you had one last question, but I also have one last question. So I'm going to do my one last question. Maybe Lynette, you can give space. I know we have very little time.
I'm done.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Brian, so I just want to kind of, for people who might be running into this video later, what do you guys most need right now? What's kind of on the top of your priority list? What are you most
That was my
looking for?
question. So
Oh, that was
good.
your quick. Great.
Yeah, that was,
great.
yeah.
I'm glad we're on the same page. So not like a list, but if you can say what your top priority is, just like a call to action.
Yeah. So to move metrics for our business on the enterprise side, we want to be meeting with VP and C-suite of companies that are acquiring $100 million or more in property. So if someone sees this and they've built a relationship with someone in that position and they want to get to know me, then reach out to me and we'll get to know one another. And if at some point there's an introduction that can be made there, that's great. That's for the enterprise side. On the consumer side or residential real estate side, we want to be working with the companies that are best at serving homeowners. So the best brokerages in the US and in the world eventually.
Any particular city?
No, we just want to work with the best. If it's a market over 250,000 people, that's something we're executing on right now. If it's smaller, it's kind of a case-by-case basis. But we want people that have deep roots in communities, build relationships there, and we want to start the process of getting to know those people. And we promise it'll take a long time, but we want to start the process. We want to get to know them.
All right. Well, like I said, I really feel horrible that I do have this hard stop, because I was like, we could go on for 3 hours. Brian, there's a really good chance we're going to want to talk to you again, because you're our just amazing first guest, amazing first company. And it's just, I feel amazing. I feel great to know that companies like this actually exist, kind of in our industry, or at least around real estate. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's not everything is just, I build websites for agents and lead gen. Like, no, this is unreal. This is like life-changing, society-changing stuff. So listen, I want to thank everybody, but special thanks to Brian for joining us for this. Yeah, and listen, if you're watching this, you heard what the man needs, right? I would say reach out to him. This is something else.
You guys are wonderful. I really enjoyed meeting you, Lynette, and you, Albert, and then Rob. I think you and I have just emailed.
Yeah,
So
but you know what? Here's the thing, man.
guys.
It's gonna take a long time to build relationships. This is the first step, and really appreciate it. All right.
Go get a COVID vaccination when you can, and let's all get together for lunch.
Awesome. All right. Thanks everybody.
Brian. Best of luck.
See you guys. Thank you.
Bye.